Hi guys, welcome back to the Beyond Football podcast. It's been a while, but we're back, we're better. Still on the journey of raising awareness of the importance of having an identity beyond football. And today, we have a very, very special episode. We have not a player, not an agent, not a coach, but today we've got another parent, a parent of a high-profile player who's played in the Premier League, in the Champions League, in the Euros, in the World Cup for England. Yinka Tomori, welcome to the Beyond Football podcast.
Well, thank you. As a parent, my son played, not me. So sometimes I was like, I'm like the superstar, but I'm not. But I happen to be a father, so an absolute pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come on. You know, it's important that parents hear this different perspective of how it really is of, you know, raising a wonder kid, a rising baller. So it's great. But I'd love to go to the genesis, to the start. You know, for you, what was your background in football? Was football always a dream for you?
No. Funny thing is, people ask me that question all the time. It's like, did you play football yourself? I think when it comes to sports, especially if you think of it as something that can be hereditary, it's usually if the parent has any flair for anything sporty, it tends to kind of pass on, because I guess when you raise a kid as well, because you're aware of sports, you tend to kind of help them get along that process. And if you begin to see certain traits that work, then you begin to encourage them that line. But my own background is hockey and cricket. I was quite good at hockey. Played hockey up until like county level. So I guess in some ways, perhaps that can translate itself into football. But I think apart from playing hockey and cricket, I think very keen football watcher. So I watch football. I wouldn't regard myself as a fan. I just am a supporter, because yes, it's a bit relaxed, my approach.
And what team do you support?
Keep it quiet. Arsenal. I'm an Arsenal guy. Yes,
Guess that. I always remember every single Nigerian dad supports Arsenal. I promise you, my dad supports Arsenal. Everyone's dad supports Arsenal. What's the background around that? Like, I don't understand. I don't know any Nigerian dad that supports Man United or.
I think more often than not, it kind of gives your age and your era away. I think most Nigerian parents, or Nigerians in the UK especially, who perhaps came in here in the early mid-90s, it was Nwako Kanu time, and he just captivated everyone. And then most people also, when we arrived in the UK, most of us stayed in London, and you had to make a choice as to the team you supported. And so at that time, I think London was mainly Arsenal or Tottenham. Yeah. And I think, again, Arsenal has a connection with Southeast London, and a lot of Nigerians kind of spend time in Southeast London. So that alongside Kanu, and I think at that time as well, Arsenal was doing quite well with a lot of big players, Tony Adams, etc. And so when Kanu came into the equation, it was just what we needed. And so I think that built that connection with Arsenal. I think, yes, I'm proud to be Arsenal, although nothing much has happened in recent years, but proud to be Arsenal.
It's really insightful. Now I understand, to be honest, that history of it. So that's really good.
Sorry, I must also say, I like Chelsea as well. I like Chelsea. I must throw that in.
But, okay, obviously it's a football podcast, but before football came into the picture, what values did you already know you wanted to pass on to your children?
I think perhaps some has to do with the Nigerian connection and some just normal family values. I think it's important to raise kids that, you know, are honest. You know, integrity is a watchword. Kids that are ambitious. For a lot of us as well, we have, especially in Nigerian connection, most of us have a Christian background, and so we want our children also to be children who also appreciate Jesus Christ in what they do, and pursue that as they grow older. In terms of other values as well, I think it's important that one raises children, or even you have young people around that are driven in whatever they decide to do. I think perhaps in times past the focus has been more academic, but I think over the last maybe 20 years or so, I think the push, and for people like me particularly, is that whatever your child wants to do, encourage them to be the best they can be in it. So those are the key values. That, alongside being people who have integrity and are helpful and kind, I think these are the fundamental values that help a young person to move forward.
It's very amazing to hear. And what you said about being driven, I feel like it really hit home for me when you said that, because I'm always like, I hate people who are, they're comfortable settling for being average or mediocrity and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very interesting to hear about that. And how do you think your cultural background has influenced your parenting approach? Because I know you mentioned it a little bit, but the values you said are quite progressive nowadays, especially if you think about Nigerian culture, where you said that it's all about ensuring that you support your child in whatever they want to do and them achieving the best. Back in the day, when we were growing up, the only pathways are doctor, lawyer, accountant, all of these strict pathways. So it's good to hear that progressive.
Yes. I think perhaps, as I kind of alluded to it earlier on, I think over time people have come to realize, perhaps maybe people from African background, where Nigerian particularly, where the focus has always been on education. I think perhaps even it's a turn of the century kind of thing. It's brought a kind of new thinking that the world we live in, that whatever you can apply yourself to and you can excel in it, then you can do well and you can make a living, because that's always the focus. Something that can earn you a living, something that can keep you and help you take care of your family. So I think perhaps there's been a slight shift. Education is, as far as I'm concerned, a fundamental thing, but having a good base in terms of whatever skills you have, making sure you make the best of it. I think that is the way people are thinking now. I think technology, the internet, etc., has exposed that part of things, that that becoming a doctor or an engineer or whatever isn't the only way. And there's a big wide world out there that you can tap into to have a good life, to enjoy life. I think, again, parents are beginning to see as well that your child must enjoy whatever they do. And if they enjoy it, it means that there's a very, very good chance that they'll do well. And I think the ultimate goal for any parent is to see their kids happy, so yeah.
It's very fascinating. But let's skip all this parent talk. Let's get to what they want, the football.
Let's talk hockey now, sir.
When did you first notice Fikayo's talent, and how did you encourage it without putting too much pressure on him?
Maybe I should start with a bit of an introduction. My name is Yinka Tomori, and my son is Fikayo Tomori. Started off at Chelsea. At the moment, he's at AC Milan. So yes, that's the background.
And when did you guys first discover his talent and see, okay, cool, this is serious. He has the potential of getting to the levels that he's got to now.
I think we were perhaps pretty naive as a family. We had very little knowledge of how big football really was. In as much as I supported Arsenal, I just saw, especially the early stages, as providing a young man with something that he enjoyed doing. I think from the age of around 1, anything that was looked like a football, he kicked. And so that was something that kind of maybe showed us that he would enjoy football. And then he and I would sit together and watch Arsenal games and, the Premiership or whatever we had then. And so that kind of built things up. And then at the stage, I think it was maybe around 4 years old, his mom thought, he could do with something to expend his energy a bit. And so a flyer came in through our door. I think we lived in Southeast London then, and I think Charlton were having some kind of summer thing, and he got involved. And after about a couple of weeks, he came back home. I think he was 4 or 5 years old, and said that he'd been asked to play with those who are like a year older. And so he said he asked me to come and watch him one evening, and I did. I thought, oh yeah, you're really fast and quick. Well, that's nice. And when he was around 7, we moved out to Gravesend in Kent, and he got into a local team. And I guess that's when we kind of noticed that he was quite good, because he was like the star in, I think, North Kent League. He kind of was the one everyone talked about. We didn't think of that as being any big deal. We just saw a young man enjoying his football until when he was around 7, just over 7 years old, and a Chelsea scout came round to his local club, Riverview, and felt that he could get into the Chelsea academy. To be honest, we still saw it as some kind of young man just enjoying his life and trying to get the best of whatever he could do. And Martha and I probably thought about it as a big deal when he turned 16. Sad as that may sound, we even at 14, 15, we never thought of him as being, a big football player or something like that. So perhaps that also saved us a lot of worry about certain things. But perhaps again, in our hearts, we felt there were certain procedures, things he needed to do just to become a rounded person, and that was what we worked on more than being a footballer. But at the age of 16, when you have to make that decision with the club, that kind of crystallizes things, and then you got to begin to think about things differently. So that was effectively that's how we.
Yeah, wow. And in terms of those early stages, I know you said he got signed for Chelsea under 7s and all the way up until under 16s. That's when it started to become a big deal. But during those periods of time, like at Chelsea, from 7 to 16, he's going on international tournaments. He's getting all of the latest boots, the latest gear, latest kit, and playing in Premier League tournaments, getting called up for England. At a point in time, most parents would, nowadays, you'd see them, think that their child has made it, or feel like, okay, cool, this is the opportunity to cash in and just go all in. How did you guys, keep that level head during that period of time?
I think as a family, we always felt that if anything is going to happen, just be diligent, and then everything else will fall in place. And again, I think this arises from our faith as well. We believe that, if God has a purpose for you, he'll make it happen. But it's important for you to be diligent, to work hard. I don't think we got carried away with all the things that came with playing in international tournaments, etc. We enjoyed going to quite a few of them. He enjoyed taking part in those tournaments. And I think we encouraged him to get the maximum out of it. But at the back of our minds, we always had, and shared with Fikayo as well, that the statistics show that, that very, very few people make it to the top right through the academy thing. And it's always sensible to kind of place your hopes on what is real, what is most likely, as opposed to putting on the cap for the exceptional. If the exceptional happens, then you learn to run with it. But it perhaps also preserves you and protects you from unnecessary pressure, because one of the things perhaps that has happened over time now is that even 12 and 13-year-olds feel under enormous pressure to get to the top. And I think if a child at 12 or 13 feels that their parents have huge expectations for them and they don't meet the expectations, they probably feel as if they have let their parents down. And I think that's a dangerous place to be. And so perhaps we worked actively to make sure we didn't find ourselves or create a scenario for Fikayo where he'd think, that I'd let my parents down if this didn't work. And so that was what we followed through. And hopefully, I would imagine that helped him to kind of just go through without feeling that he was under enormous pressure to deliver.
That's some fantastic advice for some of the young parents of footballers. Just to focus on the thing that has the highest likelihood of happening and not the exception. So it's really good to know for those parents. But what you said about that, where players feel like they're letting their parents down if they, for example, thankfully it didn't happen, but imagine now at under 16s has released or something like that, all those years of taking them to games, investing into equipment, all these things, if the parents are investing so much into it and putting that pressure during that time, it can have a detrimental effect on the player at that time. They talk about performance-based self-esteem that some players start to develop, when they're, young academy footballers, and things like that would contribute to it, to them becoming, that footballer.
Yeah, I do think that I remember having a chat with a senior person at Chelsea's academy, maybe around 7 years ago. Fikayo had been out of the academy like 4 or 5 years at that point. And he was saying how things had radically changed between when we were at the academy and the crop who were coming behind. I mean, we never talked money as a 12-year-old, but money probably came up as an issue at 16. Now parents are talking money at 12. It's again, perhaps it takes the gloss of the game and takes the gloss of a young person wanting to enjoy the process. I think it's a good thing if you obviously encourage your child to be the best they can be. But if the pressure is on that child to be like a source of financial well-being or provide financial longevity, then it takes it to a different level. And I don't think it's a right thing, the best thing to put a young person at that age through. And so it's hopefully parents getting to see that it's much more than finances, or much more than the football, but raising a young person who is well-rounded and who can face the future with confidence, no matter whatever they choose to do. Again, going back to the point about thinking about what is the norm or what is the most likely outcome. When you get into the academy at 7, every year you get a letter saying that retained or released. By the time you anticipate or see that that's going to happen to you like 10 times before you get to the 16, that's if you get through, the odds have been really stacked in your favor that way, because every other thing around you saying that to have 10 goals at a thing, you probably should have dropped off. So if you went through the process right to the end, you are, I guess, a certain element of skill and talent is there, but I think you're also quite lucky. And so it's just when you get that into perspective, I think it shapes how you work towards the final outcome.
So it's not about the football, the finances, but it's about raising that well-rounded human being.
Also, I think that is more important, because we also have to realize that even if a child is a very successful footballer, does very well, fantastic, plays at the topmost level, etc., they can play till they're 35. Okay, a few oddities like what's his name, Modric or something. They are odd people who go on to play at close to 40, but it means that young person, given that an average person would live to about 80 nowadays, that young person still has 45 years of life. And so preparing that young person just to face or to deal with just a 20-year period, as opposed to preparing that person to deal with an 80-year period, is, I think it's perhaps a bad way to align one's plans and goals. So I think as parents, if it's possible to think about the bigger picture. And I think I'm almost like a crusader for that. Everywhere I go, the message I want to share with parents particularly is to have a bigger picture. I'm not saying that a parent, if for example your son does well, that you shouldn't enjoy some of that, but have a bigger picture, bigger perspective on things. So for example now, if a young man is making so much money playing in the Premiership or whatever, an awareness that whatever happens, income is going to go from whatever it is to zero at a particular date. How have you put that into your thinking process? And it never works by putting your head in the sand and thinking, in some ways things will just fall, out or, come out well for you. More often than not, that isn't the case. Most of the time when things succeed, it is because there's a good plan behind it. And so it's getting parents from a very early stage to begin to help that child see and prepare that plan. And I think parents know that to a great extent they influence the lives of their kids. A boy from 7 to 16 on average looks up to his dad a lot. So however that person, the dad, shapes things, tends to, because that is the person who usually talks football and does all that. So however the dad shapes that story or that narrative is important. And mothers as well, they bring in a different dimension to things. So having all of that working together to prepare a young person for football, I think it's massive. Or indeed for any life at all, be it sports or in business or education or whatever it is, So.
Yeah, amazing. During that journey, I know my parents have sacrificed a lot, but on Fikayo's journey, in order to allow him to achieve what he's achieved so far, what are some of the biggest sacrifices you and the family made to support his football?
To be honest, I look back now and I really don't think, I as a person, I don't think I've done much in terms of a sacrifice. I do think that as a parent, helping your son or your daughter to be the best they can be should flow naturally. And so if I had like 8 kids, then I'd probably think, oh yes, I'm giving so much to this one, but we only have 2. And so being able to help them to be the best they can be in whatever they choose, rather than be a challenge or a sacrifice, is almost like it's a pleasure to see them enjoyed. Perhaps for me, I always think that perhaps our daughter, who's younger than Fikayo, gave a bit more, because there were times when she'd have to stand by the side of the pitch. She's not like hot on football like that or anything, but she had to make that sacrifice as well. And so we as parents also had to identify at some point that she also has a life. And so there were times when we had to kind of, maybe my wife would go with Fikayo and I would go with my daughter, and just try and make sure that both of them had something to enjoy in life. So I don't think of it as a sacrifice. I think, again, in fact, I think after a while, it was almost like a plus, because when you see a lot of parents regularly on a Saturday, for example, you go for training, it becomes like a social event, because you're chatting with parents, and you're building each other up and, encouraging each other. Sunday, you play games, you get to see all various parts of the countries, various clubs, you get to meet other people. I think in terms of life, you also enhance social development as well. So I think I wouldn't call it a sacrifice. And if it's going to be called a sacrifice, I'd say it was a pleasurable sacrifice. And we were also very blessed and lucky, or whatever you want to call it, that we got something at the end of it. Fikayo was able to play football at a pretty decent level. So, yeah, I would say it wasn't much of a sacrifice as far as I'm concerned.
That's amazing. I definitely agree with that. For that, the experience of playing in an academy, especially one like Chelsea, you see the amount of benefits that you experience there. I know my time of being, I think I was at the academy for maybe 3 or 4 years, and every year we're going away. I think I went to like 6 different countries: Germany, Croatia, Switzerland, America, yeah, and every season we're getting bags and bags of kit.
Yes, yeah. Another thing is, it from a very early age, a young man is taught how to be independent. To be able to live with other people, to be able to perhaps go into another culture and find a way of getting a balance in there, even though they have people to chaperone them and everything like that. But I think when you put all of that into the equation, you would see that it brought enormous benefit as opposed to what you probably call a sacrifice. So yeah.
No, definitely. But yeah, there are so many benefits of being in an academy. A lot of academies nowadays, recently especially, have been getting bashed in the media, etc., saying a lot of footballers, they don't provide any support, they don't do this, they just leave them alone. But no one ever shines a light on the positive side of coming through the academy. And I think the things that you mentioned, the independence that it brings you, the benefits and what it teaches you, the skills it instills in you, discipline, hard work, integrity, that winning mentality, and just performing at that elite level. Because from a young age, you're playing in those tournaments, you're away from home. You have to be able to adapt. So it's a thing that I think stays with these young players for the rest of their lives.
Keeping to time.
Yeah. So I know even from a young age at Chelsea, if you're late for training or anything, there's consequences. Whether you have to do a few runs or push-ups or things like that. So it's really important to really shine a light on that positive aspect of coming through the academy. And I know, as you mentioned multiple times, you believe education is foundational to everything. During those years of coming through the academy, a lot of parents, they might not put as much focus on education. They might just say, okay, just focus on football, make sure everything's right, and might cut their child a little bit of slack if they might miss or not perform as well, because obviously the football side. But how did you help him balance school, football, and family life?
It was clear that he was quite intelligent, and his mom and I thought it would be a waste to have all that ability and not use it. I think for me, it's a bit of a misnomer or misunderstanding when you hear things like, I'm just focusing on football. I mean, the average kid, be it in an academy, even in boys who are playing in the first team, they're probably done for the day at 2 p.m. So even if you go back to take a nap, a long nap, last year, a long nap, and you wake up at 6 o'clock, there's still a whole evening ahead of you. And at times, if you have something you are looking towards or aspiring towards, it kind of helps focus. I think young men particularly, it's always good for them to have things to aspire towards. I mentioned earlier on about how life after football is a huge proportion. In fact, the years in your life when you can talk of achievements and discovering who you are for the long term happens perhaps when you finish football. And so an average young man, for example, who finishes football after a good career, stellar career at 35, his peer group from primary school or whatever have had at least 10 years in the office environment, 10 years of learning to manage a budget, 10 years of learning to live within their means, 10 years of having to learn to live with others, and those things will have shaped them. But this football person leaves at 35 and has not gone through that process and has had someone take care of him, worry about his bills, his everything. And so that kind of causes that person to be at a kind of disadvantage. That alongside not being educated as well, I think worsens the situation. And so, I hear the story where people say, but not everybody is academic. I think it's important to clarify the fact that education is not only about academics. I think it is making sure that a young person broadens their mind, knows how things work. I think particularly when it comes to financial issues, I strongly believe actually that financial education should be a fundamental part of the education curriculum. But in the case of football at the highest level, or a sports person, they're earning amounts that their peer groups, and perhaps multiple amounts of what their peer group is earning, and so they do not live in a real world. I think something has to be done, and perhaps I think it starts with the parents, because most of the parents are part of the real world. I think it starts with the parents to help that young person to realize that there's a real world out there, and help them to get educated to be able to cope with it. So education in terms of being informed, because again, there's a reputation that footballers are perhaps amongst the people who are not smart at all. Being able to be aware of the environment, knowing what is happening in government a bit, to know how finances work, know why it is important to save money, know the options you have to invest money. Those are the bits of education that I think matter. And even if a young person, because they haven't had exposure to these things, don't work at it, I think a parent should help create or influence the child to begin to see those things. And perhaps at the early stage, they have to do that kind of thinking for the young man, so that as he grows older as well, that he begins to be informed. And also, I think parents should be very deliberate in creating the tools for them to get that information, you see. So that's the basic idea in terms of education. I purposely didn't go on to talk about university, or because I don't think a lot of parents, that's the focus points we first come up with, but education is just preparing them for the world out there in terms of, social skills, managing finances, social interaction, stuff like that, building that up, and then helping them to see that they are normal human beings. Because to be honest, at times you see the way people look at footballers, and really they don't see them as normal human beings. The funny thing is, I hear young people, maybe someone says, "Oh, that is Fikayo Tomori's dad." And it's like, no. For some reason, they feel that some of these people just fell down from heaven, boom, and that, it's helping them to realize, and helping the young man as well to realize, that there's a pathway to life, and that after football ends, that pathway still continues. So that's what the education part should be.
Yeah, that's powerful. And parents need to make sure that they help their child to see and have a snippet of that world outside of the football bubble.
Parents, to be honest, the power is in the hand of the parents. And for a young footballer, they always say, apart from the parents, the agent is also a key part of their lives. But I think parents have to take their position. Not all parents are informed or educated on certain things, but I think parents should begin to take it upon themselves that if their child is aspiring to something like this, that one, they help the child get the balance right of what expectations are, and and perhaps if failure comes in inverted commas, that the values or how they see their child does not change. I think that's one of the statements that I always kind of remember to say to my son and to other people, that even if you don't end up being a footballer, it doesn't make you any lesser, my son. And I think that's key. And then when you have those things in place, you can spend time also then letting them see those values that we talked about, values about building a future, planning for the future, thinking ahead. When you incorporate that, and perhaps also letting the young man see it in your life, because I think that's another big thing. Perhaps the greatest education we can give our children is with our lives. So, also showing our children how we manage our own finances, telling them how we have structure and how we have a vision for the future. if you're a parent who, if you do not do that, it becomes difficult for you to show your child. I think it's a great opportunity that even if you have a child who's playing football and you haven't kind of raised that part of yourself, it gives you a good opportunity to develop it, to show the child, and to also help yourself. And so in the process, you have two groups of people being educated and getting better, you know. So that's the way I see it, though.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That is awesome. You know, in terms of your faith, your values and character, we've spoken a lot about that, but these are, you know, the non-negotiables and the building blocks for life. How has your faith shaped the way you've guided Fikayo, especially in a competitive sport like football, and his experience of injuries, setbacks, etc.?
We're Christians in my house, thank God for that. And everything we do starts and ends there. Be it football or whatever, we believe that, one, if God gives you a talent, use it. I think it's a waste if, for example, you can see your child can play football, is quite good at it, but you insist that child has to become a doctor or something like that. I think that when God gives you a gift, use it. And that is where faith comes in as well, that before you do anything, one, you know that if you put in your best and you let perhaps your faith is like a turbocharge to it. The faith turbocharges that process to get even better. So you have an expectation because you believe that in the end, things work out for your own good. And so before we take any step, be it even going to an academy or moving to another club or going on loan, whatever, we spend time just praying about it. And just, I say to people, it's not as if you have some kind of angel coming from heaven saying, "No, you, my son, this is the way to go." It's just an inner peace you have about what needs to happen. And that creates an expectation in you that whatever happens, all will be well. And that also shapes what we do in terms of making sure that character shows, because as believers, that's the first thing people see. It's our character. It's not the faith we have on the inside of us that becomes obvious. It's what we do, our works that become obvious for people to latch onto. And that is the biggest message we can give. And I think also showing that whatever happens, be it your son getting to the top of the Premiership or whatever, or even if he gets dropped, that faith means that you are confident about what the future holds, and you're not in despair. And I think that's a massive thing about the part of faith in what we do. You believe that whatever you do, because you commit your ways into God's hands, it will be well. And whatever comes out of it is where you believe you're meant to be. So that is the way we see faith. That's the way I see faith.
Wow. We don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future.
Well said.
That's it, you know. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
It sets you free because you know that there's someone watching out for you. Every now and again, sounds a bit odd, but I wonder if one does not have something that you feel is bigger than you. When you come to the end of yourself, where do you go? That is a massive, massive part, because the world we live in at the moment as well, actually the world we've always lived in, has its challenges. If everything starts and ends in you, then I think that's a tough and pretty uncomfortable place to be. But believing there's something bigger than you and trusting and hoping and seeing it come to pass as well, I think it's a very liberating feeling, and it makes you approach the future without fear. You believe it will be well. That's what faith does for us.
Yeah, inspiring stuff here. You know, you talk about, you know them by their character, you know them by their fruits. You should know them. So it's always good to see that. And you know, from watching Fikayo's journey and you can see the fruits of his upbringing, the way he's been brought up. So it's always beautiful to see. But you know, over that long journey, what was the most memorable moment for you as a father during his journey?
I think it'll be the Under-20 World Cup. in 2017. Yeah, 2017, I think. It was a funny one because we England knew they had a good team at that age, a good crop of boys, and I decided to go to South Korea for the event, and I booked my ticket to cover the first round. The first 3 games or whatever it is you play in the first round. And I remember thinking to myself that that's the only thing that's guaranteed that we're going to have as part of the England team then. And I remember when they qualified for the next round, for the knockout stage, I remember telling Fikayo that if they got into the final, I'll come back to South Korea. And so I got back to London, and I think I was out at work, and I just got this call, and he says, "Dad, book your ticket." Yeah, that was, just to confirm that they got into the final. And because I made a promise, it became so memorable as well, because I remember I dropped the phone, called my wife to say, well, that's it. South Korea calls me. And I just got on the internet then, booked a ticket straight away. I think I was out to South Korea the next day. And so going in there, also hoping that they would win, but with a bit of an open mind. And so when they got when the final started, they had a penalty awarded against them. The keeper saved it. I think it was, who was the keeper now? Can't remember his name now. But the keeper saved the penalty, and then they went on to win. Calvert-Lewin scored the only goal that won the tournament, and it was like almost a surreal moment, because it was. Again, perhaps England did not think about it as much of a big deal, but as far as I'm concerned, that was the first World Cup we won since 1966. And so that was good to see. And so having him, celebrate, I remember a few people by the pitch side, they saw me just waving, and that he was looking for me. And in South Korea, it was just like a guard of honor, just kind of, they just cleared a path for me just to be able to go to the pitch side. And that for me was really, really memorable, and I was so happy. It was money well spent going back to South Korea. So yes, that's perhaps my big one. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic experience.
It's a good one.
No, that's great. And what advice or what charge would you give to parents with children in academy football?
I think now, based on what I see, I think people if parents are not careful, their attention would be more on what the child would do as a 16, 18, 20, 25-year-old. That seems to be more of the focus, as opposed to thinking about the journey itself. The young man at 7, 8 is already, from what I can gather now, already been seen, because he's been called to an academy to be, oh, he's going to be a big player. And I have seen this many, many times where there are kids that I think, gosh, this is a wonder kid. And within 3 years, they're nowhere to be found. So if a parent sees the journey as going not just for football, but, pardon the pun, beyond football, then I think it's a more rounded picture. If there are setbacks along the way, it isn't regarded as a disaster. I think a lot of young people now don't have a plan B. And I think, unfortunately, some people make it sound as if you have a plan B, that it means that you are losing focus of plan A. But I think it makes common sense for you to have alternatives, to prepare yourself as a parent for alternatives, and prepare yourself to be able to support your child if those alternatives come in. No matter how you tell your child he's your son, no matter what. But if you're saying, oh, so by the time he signs his first big contract at 21, then he will buy me a house and stuff like that, and the young man listens to that and hears that, there is no way, if he gets dropped at 16, that he won't feel like a failure, that he's let his parents down. So it is important to start the narrative well, Let that child know that one, their success or failure on the football pitch, whilst it is important and nice and can be rewarding, that is not what makes them who they are. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't diminish their motivation. I think on one of the things that you said, and one of your rights, you said that because having an alternative, having a plan B actually can help them to be better players, because they're playing with a lot more freedom without any baggages they feel they're carrying. Usually now you see if parents, again, by the time a boy gets to 16 and gets signed up into the academy, if a child knows that the whole family sees him as the meal ticket for the future, failure is much more. One of the things I've noticed in history and experience and psychology, I'm a psychologist, you know what it means. No matter what, especially for young men, even where their dads have not been very nice people, having daddy say, well done, is massive. For a lot of young people, mom can say, yeah, you're the best footballer everywhere on the world, etc. When dad looks at you and says, well done, son, you did great, it takes it to another level. And so knowing that as a parent, knowing that that is the kind of power you have, use it well to shape the child to see that there's life beyond football, and begin to prepare them for it, even alongside. I'm talking from experience here as well, because one of the things I believe that our steps have been ordained by God for us to do this now, because we can now share a story, a narrative, because we have been part of that process. It is not something that we're talking about out of head knowledge. Could you allow me to talk about a bit of Fikayo's part? Right? We were blessed again with Chelsea as his team, because with Chelsea, they supported education. There was a time when Chelsea had their own school. We said, I think they wanted him to come in when he was 13, but we felt it was important for him to spend time and finish his GCSEs at the grammar school he was in Kent. He had to go on a day release. Some people thought that would reduce his opportunity, but guess what? It didn't. From there, Chelsea were also very fantastic to support us for him to do A-levels. But, when he was 16, they supported the A-levels. But thereafter, we looked at what Fikayo was doing. We knew he had the ability. Very intelligent young man, even though I'm his dad, I say so myself. But he was able to go on to the Open University to do a degree. He did it in 4 years and did very well as well. It just goes to show that there's a story that can be told, and that you can get to the top with the same, intensity, whatever you put yourself through. And so that is the story I really would like to share with people, that journey has to be seen not in isolation, but over the lifetime of a young person, and putting blocks and things in place to make that happen.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And as we're just about to wrap up now, love to ask, beyond Fikayo's journey and all the amazing things that you've discussed, who are you beyond football?
My normal life on a day-to-day basis, I'm an accountant. I run a small accounting practice. I think in some ways that perhaps helps me to see certain things, but I do think that a lot of people say, oh, that's why you perhaps go along this line, but I don't think that's the main thing. I think it's just a mindset of looking at the future. And so who I am as a person is, apart from my accountancy as well, I'm fiercely passionate about seeing young people who are driven, people like you. I mean, that's why, I was keen to spend time with you and to get to know you. If I see a young man who is driven and ambitious, that's what I like. And I'd like to share some of my dreams, my goals, in making sure that they have a better journey than I had, by giving them the information and the tools and perhaps some pointers to help them, maybe not in every area of their lives, but in certain areas of their lives where I think I've been able to succeed. So that's how I see it, and that's who I am beyond this. And I have a lovely wife, and a daughter as well, outside of Fikayo, and we're a pretty small family, just the four of us. And yeah, I count myself to be really, really blessed to have that kind of setup around me.
Yeah, wow, it's been one of the best. Really, a lot of gems, a lot of wisdom being shared on this podcast today, mainly aimed at the parents of footballers, worldwide. And I'm hoping and praying that they take something that will help them on their journey to supporting their players in football and beyond football. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing your wisdom on the podcast.
An absolute pleasure. I'm more than happy if anyone wants to have a chat with me about stuff. I think we need to take this opportunity to build a future. And if your child is successful at the topmost level, making sure that whatever they have earned lasts them a lifetime. Very important.
Yeah, powerful stuff. Well, that's us. It's been the Beyond Football podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed. We're coming up to episode 40 now on this podcast, been on this journey of having different guests. And our mission is to ensure that every player has an identity beyond football or a second plan A. So join the Beyond Football movement. Make sure you comment #Beyond Football down below. And guess what? Our website is back live now. Just type in beyond-football.uk. Check us out. It's a one-stop shop for all the things that we're doing. And we're excited to announce that we're having a Beyond Football conference in November. We'd love to have you guys there. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. We're back to the Beyond Football podcast. It's been almost a year since we've recorded one, but we're back now. And yeah, let's get it. Beyond Football to the world and back.